Must be live. Order starts. Item 1B, pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and to open forum. Anyone here for open forum? Just raise your hand. Open forum or public hearing? Okay. Open forum. If you have anything, say, I'd recommend wait for the public hearing if you're here for the budget, so. On the budget or not regarding the budget? Okay, we'll wait for the budget then. All right, item 3, suggest motion move to open a public hearing for here purpose of hearing over and comments on the proposed FY 2025 municipal budget.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. We'll enter in at 6 p.m. All right, do you have any questions, comments, concerns on the budget? Just raise your hand, and if you want to go to the podium, so we can get on mic.
Bill Chubbuck, Lincoln. Mine are just general comments. And first, I'll respond to Mr. Edwards' comment of last week. I have no problems with the services that I have received through the town, whether it be the transfer station, the code enforcement officer, the assessor, the front counter. I have no problem with that. Where my issue is I did have problems, as Mr. Trask pointed out last week. The budget is kind of difficult to follow because it's broken up all over the place. It really would help an awful lot of people, and maybe even you people, if you went more towards a line item budget so that you could see this is what this costs, this is what this costs. But then we get to the taxation issue. I realize that the assessor is in a very tough position with sales and the sales ratio study. I did get a chance, a privilege to serve 3 terms as a assessor, select person in Enfield. I know how that works, and we're getting clobbered right now with sales, especially on lakeshore frontage, which I happen to be part of. Mine went up 200,000 this year, which is nothing, I understand, but it will make my taxes go to about 6 with your 24, which I believe is what you said last week, the mill rate. That'll make my taxes $16,000. My pension certainly did not go to that extent. And I'm looking at a building that was 1955, 1951, that I have certainly remodeled, but a lot of it is still that age. And you mentioned that you don't want to do a reval. I think you have overused your assessor. They're doing too much. I think they're doing a wonderful job in terms of economic development, but I don't think that leaves enough time to do the assessing. And when I look, 4 or 5 lots down, my building is valued at $331,000, and the next one that has 5 acres and I'm on 0.28, the value is $17,000. There's some inequity there. The same way that my house is valued 10 times more than the new learning center in the middle of Main Street. I think it's definitely time that we've got to have a total reval. I don't think you can keep putting that off. And I don't think the assessor, I think probably the assessor has more institutional knowledge than anybody else in this office. And I think you're asking too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Just step up to the podium.
Hi, Lisa Dunn. I live up on Highland Avenue. Speaking about the assessor, I actually was on the phone for about an hour with the state of Maine today to find out the, actually the property tax department and spoke to a couple of nice people, and our tax assessor, as long as they're certified with the Maine certification for assessor, they can do it. I do agree. She's got way too much on her plate. And I feel honestly that $500,000 is too much to give to another outside company to do it. I would like to see something within our town with all the realty people we have, with maybe hiring another assessor to do this. I don't feel that it would cost us $500,000 to do it. But I do agree as far as my neighbor, people down the street, people are not being taxed. No, I'm not gonna say correctly, because that's not my place to say, but it's all over the place. There's homes that are literally falling down and they're being assessed way too much. And there's some very nice homes, some recently sold homes for very big money that aren't being assessed at that. And I know that we've been increased this year, to between the 70 and 100%. And looking at that, those numbers are, for one, there's an address that I know of. He is being assessed at 100,000 right now. And his went up $30,000. So he's gonna be paying taxes, no matter what the mill rate is, he's gonna be paying taxes at 130,000 just on his building. And it's not worth that. And I just don't feel, we all have to pay our share. And I totally agree with that. But when you can blatantly see properties are not being taxed correctly, and it's public knowledge, you can go in and look. And I just think it's very sad, especially for some older people, who have been here and have been paying and paying, and to see our retired people have to leave because they can't afford their taxes would be really, really sad, because this is a beautiful community for that. We don't have big business as of yet. I know we're working on it. But to me, it needs to be fair, and something needs to be done ASAP for that. With the homestead exemptions, there's still some out there that people are not living in their homes and they're claiming this exemption. That's $25,000 of people who are renting their home, getting income, that aren't paying taxes on that $25,000. And I just don't feel that's proper either. And I think we need to address this. We need to do something about this to help, the rest of us. And especially people who are living on fixed incomes, to have to leave this beautiful place because of being taxed out, and they've been in their home 40, 50, 60 years. I just don't think that's right. Just because of the big real estate boom, we're all now paying the price for that. My taxes went up, and I'm a firm believer. I bought a foreclosure, and the day I bought that house, I still pay taxes on what that house was assessed at years prior. I am now finally catching up to where my house is, by putting my own money and sweat equity into it. And I am now, and I believe in paying my fair share, absolutely. But I think everybody needs to be, their properties all need to be looked at, so everybody is paying their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure you all know I'm Jabet Mayo, Lincoln. I did a little research this last week when I was here. I wanted to let you know that in April 1, 2010, our population, according to the US Census, was 5,085. In April 1, 2020, our population decreased to 4,851. Okay, that's a 4% decrease. Looking at the budget for FY25, The total expense side was $11,119,010. The revenue side was $4,929,737 with a net budget of $6,189,000 and change. In 2011, which I couldn't find a book for 2010, or I would have done the 10-year just like I did the census, but in 2011, our expense side was $5,350,103. Our revenue side was $2,947,747 with a net budget of $2,402,356. Both of them not including any school assessment or any county assessment. So that's a 61% increase. I don't see any equity there at all. You say we have grown. To my knowledge, that's not growth in people, that's growth in expenses. I also looked at the fund balance for June 30, 2011, and it was at $3,304,815. My first question would be, what is the fund balance now, or the latest audit, what was the fund balance?
For which one?
Fund balance is the general fund balance.
You mean unassigned fund?
Yes, undesignated, yes.
It is. Started the process. Unless you have a Melissa.
1.9 is the unaudited amount.
So you can see that threshold is getting smaller and smaller. And we're increasing the expenses as well. So our savings is going down, our expenses are going up, population is going down. Some information that I'd like to have some answers for in the current budget is you have proposed an audit budget of 16,000 and a pre-audit work of 50,000. Can you explain to me what the difference between those two numbers are?
The audit is the price of the auditor. The pre-audit is a separate firm that does not do audits in the state of Maine, that is preparing us to be ready for the audit, to be able to do those outstanding years audits. And I learned only recently, and I told you at the time, that this is becoming common thing. So the fee we've already done of $50,000 brings us up through all the years that are.
So can I ask one more, how many years are we behind?
Three.
So, again, I'm gonna go on previous knowledge. I used to work in the position of treasurer, as you all know. That was my job back then, is to get the audit prepared for the auditor. I don't understand how we can be behind 3 years worth of audit work. I can't understand why the state of Maine hasn't come to our community and asked the question, why? To me, there might be some lost revenue. I don't know if Maine Revenue Services is holding any money back because of the audits not being completed. And if we were a school department, not an RSU, we would be losing our education subsidies for those years that weren't audited, completely audited. So I would behoove the council to look at what people are doing. And I know it's not your job to supervise people, but to request somebody find out what's going on, why this work isn't being completed in a timely manner. And I would suggest too, that if we've gone 3 years without an audit, why can't we go at least another 1 or 2 and maybe spread this 50,000 out a little bit, so we're not all getting whacked in 1 week, in 1 year, as to trying to catch up with everything that should have been done a long time ago. I just am concerned that last week I mentioned that the fire department budget has increased 71%. And I understand from talking to the manager that has something to do with the council authorizing a new contract with the firefighters, reducing their hours worked from 56 work week to a 42-hour work week, which required you to hire 2 or however many more firefighters to fill those positions. I would suggest that the state of Maine is having a hard time finding firefighters to fill the positions we currently have. I can't imagine opening up 2 new positions, that would have been a good thing for the town of Lincoln. I think what that's done is created an egregious amount of overtime for the people that are there, which will, end up being more costly, I think, in the end. I just wonder what is happening with these expenses, that we aren't looking at these things before the budget comes to the crunch time. Here we are looking at numbers that don't even make sense, in my opinion. We're spending way too much money. In doing the research on the budget, I found the 2011 annual report. On the back page of that report shows at that time the current donators for the Community Recreation Center Trust Fund. I read some time ago in the Lincoln News that the council was thinking about spending that money on something other than a recreation center. I would suggest you contact these donators and find out if that's what they want their money spent on, because when they originally donated the money, it was to develop a recreation center based on some drawing that was made up at the time. So don't spend money that you shouldn't spend, and keep track of the money that you have more closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Good evening. Good evening. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Bill Davis on Taylor Street in Lincoln. I'm basing my comments really just on what I've heard and on the article in last week's Lincoln News. So knowing how things work, they may have moved on, at least in details from that. But my interest and concern is just in the big picture. I have no special knowledge about any of these lines, but I don't think I would have had the whatever to bring forward to the town's people and taxpayers a budget increase of 12.5%. I would think an increase of 7% would have created some questions. 12.5 is really remarkable. I understand costs and inflation. We all pay inflation too. I didn't get a 12.5% pay Social Security increase this year or last year or the year before. And I don't know anybody who has, with the exception perhaps of the town manager for next year. And the timing, I mean, I understand the town is under a real pinch as well. I mean, this inflation with probably 21, 22, or cost of living is probably 21, 22% increase since this administration took over, and that makes life tough for everybody. It's a horrible tax increase for all of us. But 12.5% for the town, for the taxpayers, I actually don't think it's doable or whatever. Two smaller items. And to have this come out at a time when you just chased away what was probably the best librarian this town has ever had.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk, we're talking about employees,
Okay,
current or former.
no current or former? That was
I'm not gonna
former.
allow anyone to talk about
employees, so
About what?
you're not gonna talk about employees or former employees on items that
Okay.
don't
Okay,
concern
I
the
hear you. I hear you.
budget.
Let me just say, I guess I have real concerns about the quality of the library as we move into the future. That's been important. I think the only other specific suggestion I have is I was on the budget committee, I guess, for 2 years, maybe 3. So I kind of remember what all the pieces were. And I mean, that's a really nice list of the major items. And I think it would be very useful to townspeople via the Lincoln News. And I don't know the new people at the Lincoln News, but I'm not sure there's anybody here today from the Lincoln News. But sorry. Anyway, an article with much greater information about mainly the reasons for this increase. I know it will be a big increase. I know you're under pressure. And in fact, frankly, I would love to see this list in a chart in the Lincoln News with proposed budget for each one, current year's budget, percent increase, 10 years ago budget, 10% increase, and that's it. And then, it's a really significant explanation as to reasons. I think a lot of the reasons are very good. I noticed, and yeah, I know employees are the main cost. I noticed also in the Lincoln News that I think the RSU 67 budget increase for this coming year is what, 4.3% or so? What?
2.2.
3
Then
point,
went down 2.8 last year.
okay.
Overall, 1%.
Well, you might go talk to some of the school board members or superintendents, see how the heck they've done that. I mean, that's all employees, or that's mostly employees as well. And, some of them are pretty well paid. Period. Just, I don't envy your situation. Nor mine if I have to pay this increase or something resembling it when next the property taxes come around. Thank you.
Rick?
Mr. Council Chair, if I might, there is an idea drifting about the community that I will get some large pay increase if this budget is supported is passed. The fact is, you gave me an increase last February, which is already in place, and you did that based on your annual review of me. There is no increase for me in this budget as proposed.
Correct. Yes.
What was the last increase?
One from 113 or 108 to 125, I believe, off the top of my head without the contract in front of me. Yeah. Anyone else? Council?
Ms. Mayo, those recreation center funds, we didn't touch those. We didn't, those are in a trust, those are both in trust. And we didn't trust those. I just want to make sure you knew, we didn't take those. Okay. It was clerk, police department, fire department, public works, transfer station, and public safety building. Those were the accounts that we located, that we used, or that we have asked to use. We didn't touch those trust accounts. And the total, even though the total in the unassigned balance might be 1.9, we have a very good investment person that helps us, and we're at 6,107,523 between McGregor, Cobb, what they call main PERS, and MRC. But we've conserved that and used interest off that to offset our budgets. So that's what we're trying to do with these accounts that we've located, and that's what we're trying to do with some other things. So, you know, we may have 1.9 million in the unassigned, but we're actually sitting on 6.1 million. That's how we assist in the budget every year. We use that interest. If we draw down those principals, we're not gonna have any interest. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything?
We going to individual.
Just, if you got anything, just.
I'd like to talk about the $163,000 assessment. If we absolutely need it, and I'm not saying we don't need an assessment. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that right now, until we get business in here, I want to hold off on that. And I can't talk, I'm teetered. I can't talk personnel here. So I'm not going to, but I'm just saying, I would like to see us work this and not set aside $163,000 this year and see what our business outlook looks like. Last, we were told Biofine was gonna break ground in the last quarter of this year. We were told that. That's moving forward. That's putting construction workers in here. That's putting more tax base in here. And I really think this is a full year to start this. If we wanna, you know, I'd just assume that the assessor have somebody working and training under her. That would be a heck of a lot less expensive than 163,000. But someday when she decides to leave, if we haven't trained anybody, we're gonna be in a pickle. So that's, I'd like to see this year, hold off, make a plan for next year to maybe hire a person to work that. And I do think we put too much on it. I do. I just would like to see us hold off on that large amount this year. Thank you.
Just to expand on that a little bit, just to know that, you know, some of these companies that do that are already 3 or 4 years out. So in order to, you know, find somebody to actually do it, you know, you're gonna be probably waiting that time, probably more. So
My concern is, do we need to be putting some money out there up front now to start that process with the work towards the contract, so that we can get one done in 3 or 4 years if we decide we want to go that way?
I mean, I guess my opinion would be, I'd like to see us do it as soon as either we approve the budget or at our next council meeting, approve to go out to bid or seek quotes on it to see what the cost is gonna be. And because if we don't have to pay it for 3 years, that's one thing. They say they want a half of a deposit or something. But yes, it is, I know Ruth had said it's gonna be a 3-year process, but we've heard from at least 2 people in the public. And, I mean, it's really up to the public. Do you feel, you know, if, you know, your house gets reevaluated and yours goes up, yours doesn't, yours goes up, mine doesn't, like, some people are gonna be very unhappy for 3 to 10 years until the process could be done. And there's nothing we can, I mean, we can't hit every house in a year or two. That's why you go to a reevaluation. So it's either, you know, some people are gonna pay more tax and other people's gonna pay less, or you can make it fair to everybody. I look at I'd prefer to make it fair for everybody.
We may be able to answer this, or maybe you can, Rick, I'm not sure, whoever wants to. How long, if we hire an outside contractor to do this revaluation, how long of a process is that? Once it happens, I understand that we're gonna have to wait.
Contractors, how fast they can move, and I would like to have Bruce speak to this. But if you're going to ask her to do that before that happens, I'd like you to know, we are taking buildings down on the mill site now. There are construction people working over there right now. Building back up. Yes, they said last quarter of 2024. If it runs a little later than that, I won't be sure.
Ruth, would you like to speak to the reevaluation process or anything reevaluation?
I would like, actually love to speak on that. What this lady said is absolutely correct. And that is what we're facing. We had such a volatile market during COVID that we had so many sales. We had such jumps in prices, as I said to you, when I first proposed this, that I can go and typically my go-to test was the typical FHA ranch style home. Because we have so many of those, they give you a good indication of where the adjustments are and how to put the factors in for like the extra bathroom and the extra components that are in houses. And I apologize if I speak over people's understanding because I deal with this all the time and sometimes I get assessors speak. So I will apologize for that. But even now, I can go down an area, say a market area like Edward Street area, Tibbetts Drive, etc., and compare 3 or 4 houses, and they've got $100,000 range with no obvious differences. So they're right. It is all over the place. And this is not just unique to Lincoln. It's happening all over the state of Maine. And if we did have a reval to see every house, they come in with a crew and they do the inspections and they do the assessments and what you ask them to do. In other words, if we put it out for a bid that we want this done in 2 years, they would hire the people to get it done in 2 years. They do the assessments, then they put them out to the public for them to review. They have their hearings and then they apply the adjustments. Whereas right now we have such a wide range of values on similar type of properties. It's going to be very, very difficult to go to one section of town, reevaluate that or review that, then go to the other section because you're talking the lag between would be 3 to 4 years. So in essence, you'd be fairly assessing a quarter of the town and unfairly assessing the other 3/4. So, and where we have done so well reviewing properties in the past and having an equalized market was because we didn't have such a volatile experience that we did during COVID. And again, it's not unique to Lincoln. It really isn't. I never thought, I grew up here. I was born and raised here. I never thought I'd ever see a $500,000 sale. Well, now they're commonplace. They're commonplace. And I can see a house on the lake with a similar size lot. One's 700 square feet. The other one is 2,000 square feet and they sell within 25,000. Very hard to take those components and come up with a mathematical equation that you can apply throughout and be consistent. But the problem is, and I will quite frankly say, I thought I didn't have this job anymore. I thought somebody else was taking over and training for it. So we kind of had a year lag. Last year, I came in when the assessor that was supposed to be in training resigned, and I basically did a year's work in 2 weeks to get ready for tax bills. With the amount of work we're doing in economic development and the grants and the activity that's going on at that mill site, I'm afraid it's very difficult for me to keep up with the assessing work. I don't want to say that, but it's the truth. So feel free to ask me any questions. I'd be happy to answer. And yes, you could hire somebody part-time to help, even a contractual appraiser, just to go out and list the properties for me would be a significant help.
My question just on talking about the reevaluation, do they take into account sales price? Like they take into, so if one house is 700 square feet and the other one's 2,000, and they both sell for near the same price, do they take all that into account or?
They do.
Okay.
They absolutely do. It's a very statistical, mathematic. They use means and coefficients of disbursement.
Compare it to other areas,
yes,
things like that? Okay.
Yes.
Just trying to wrap my head around
Yeah,
it.
I could explain it even more, but yes, they do. They do figure everything.
John?
When was the last time the town was revalued?
1971
So
was
Roger
the last.
Roger Morrison did that.
Nope, Roger did not. They hired United Appraisal that came in. It was a firm, a reassessment firm, and they came in with a whole crew and they did reassess the whole town.
So we have done this in the, we didn't know that, we have done this in the past.
Yes, we did. Yes, and at that time, it cost the town of Lincoln, I'd have to double check, but if memory serves me correct, it was about 250,000.
Didn't know that we'd done this in the past, this was called.
Yes, we did. But there, for instance, there are some times where, you know, you can keep up with it because your market is just, you know, going up. It doesn't have these big fluctuations. This COVID market was an epic adjustment. For instance, just one example, I usually added about 12 new lots a year, you know, from subdivisions and people splitting their property and things like that. First year of COVID, I did 75 new lots. And those all had, most of them had construction on. You know, so the growth factor here has been huge. I used to make Trio, you can make a report on all the changes you make in the assessing, you know, from when people change ownership, etc. I averaged about 4,500 entries a year from 2012 when we started Trio to right before COVID. During COVID, my entries are now up to 24,000 plus annually. And I will tell you that Lincoln's market, because of the size of Lincoln and because of all the different water bodies and stuff, which are all different, it's busy. It's really busy. Wade filed, I think, 12 permits today. So and it's staying busy. And, you know, Jebat mentioned population. And I will say this, I've read those statistics. I use those statistics. I use them for grants. But I can tell you, a census taken during COVID, where you basically had to send it in or they didn't count you, I really, really question the results of that census, because I'm going to tell you, anybody coming through town right now on a Thursday, when people are coming in for their properties that they bought on the lakes, you try to get around Lincoln. It's busy. It's busy.
Ruth, what is the likelihood, if for some reason the town did decide to use the assessing department to do this reevaluation, what's the likelihood that you're gonna find somebody qualified and given the time frame?
Well, I know this might be surprising to people, but there isn't a lot of people going into the assessing field because they don't like to be yelled at. So right now, the state is experiencing a shortage of qualified assessors, and you'll see a lot of areas that are really close together, especially in southern Maine. Like they now have a Cumberland assessing district. You know, you have communities that are sharing one assessor, like Old Orchard and can't remember the other coastal town that they do, but there's multiple areas where they're handling 2 or 3 towns because of the lack of a qualified assessor.
And I don't even know what the longevity is of a person that's going into the assessing now. I mean, you've been here forever.
Well, I've been here since dirt. Yeah, been here since
Who's
dirt.
got that type of commitment nowadays? I mean, obviously, there's a market for them.
There is a
nobody's
market for them, but it's, how shall I say it? If you're looking for people to come up to you and say, oh, thank you so much for assessing my home and charging me taxes, that was great. It's not what you would say really a rewarding, you know. I always look at it as a point of education, to educate people what we're doing. But, you know, I mean, just keeping up with the changes is, you know, I mean, I certified, and these are sales that didn't have special circumstances with Department of Revenue. I'm getting ready for my audit, and with Revenue Services, and I certified 280 sales in Lincoln that had no special circumstances. You know, that means like not estates, not divorces, not, you know, things like that. That's a lot of sales. It's a lot of activity. And I have appraisers that come in my office from outlying areas because if they're looking for a unique type of property, 9 times out of 10, they can find a comp here in Lincoln.
So if we count on you and somebody else working with you to do the assessment, the assessing, How long a time period are you talking about?
We have 5,000 properties right now. It takes you probably to list a property appropriately. That means go out, inspect it, measure it, take a picture of it, do the assessment. It takes about 3 hours per parcel. So you multiply 5,000 by 3 hours, and that's how long it will take. And that doesn't include the business equipment. Because I also am in charge of assessing business equipment for businesses. Now, business equipment is another animal because business equipment you have to handle 3 times. You do the assessment, then you have to go through it and extract the property that qualifies for the business tax exemption. You have to make a list and certify that with the state so you get your reimbursement. Then after you do that, you go back and look at the equipment that didn't qualify for the business exemption, because that qualifies for the business reimbursement program. Then you have to make a list of that, verify the assessment, verify it was on the list, and send that to the state.
So if you were doing it full time, not doing any economic work, how many years would that?
Oh, I'm thinking if it was one person, I'm thinking it would be 5 to 6 years. And that would be just nonstop.
I don't think we can. I don't think we can do voucher for 5 or 6 years on the economic development.
I don't plan on being here 5 to 6 years. I hate to tell you that, but you know, there's that age factor where it keeps going up and I can't seem to stop it.
That's my point. And my point is, we've got all the work that we're doing for economic development, that you're involved in with economic development, very important work. And then we have this reevaluation that we have to think about. And I agree with you. I think we should start taking some money aside, because who knows when we're going to get a company even get this started.
Well, I think that there was a suggestion made, go out to bid.
I like that.
See what the price is, see if they require a down payment to at least get in the queue. I think actually that's a workable idea. And that would delay putting money aside for another year. Because I can tell you right now, the revaluation firms are tapped out.
Yeah,
Because every community, Enfield just went through one, Burlington just went through one, I mean, Bangor is going through one. Every day I see another community going out for a reval.
They want you to have one every, 10 or 15 years or so?
They recommend that you do a revaluation, and the revaluation can be either in-house or through a firm like this. And what we've been doing has been in-house every 10 years. And this time, though, I think with the changes and the inequities I can see, looking at the assessments, that it's time, we need to do it.
And just to go again, let's say you were doing it all by yourself in 6 years.
I feel
Whatever-
tired right now.
Whatever happened is, if there's another big fluctuation in those 6 years, you start the whole process again and take another 6 years and there could be more fluctuations.
At least the properties would have been looked at fairly current. And I feel confident if all the properties are reviewed in a current manner, then that's when that in-house reval works. But we have had so much development and so many changes that, and I've had so many responsibilities that I will say that I can't get to the properties like I'd like to.
But a reval gets everything on an even
Correct.
level, and then you
Correct.
can maintain from there.
Correct.
Unless something just,
Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember a time when I was employed with the town of Lincoln that I was just assessor.
Council Chair, it is true that Bruce is doing a lot with economic development, and he has more to do than any one person could be. But you do remember that he changed economic development advisors, and we cut the price of that in half in the process. One of his terms was that he be given someone to work with him such that he didn't have to be here on a near daily basis. That has worked. He's very happy with it. He's done a great job. We are producing a number of large grants that are helping us to redevelop that mill site. I can tell you, when I came here, I knew there was a big job ahead of us to redevelop that mill site. I did not understand how. And she's doing extremely well with that. And for the moment, she's keeping assessing going. I think regarding assessing, we really need another pair of eyes. It's been that many decades since that was done, that I think we need.
Yeah, so
Well, thank you.
I think, I don't know if John or George had said it, but I like the idea of going up to bid for this and knowing exactly where we stand. And as Rich said, if we do that, that takes the 163,000 kind of off the books for this year. Until we have an answer. Then we look at it. But next year, the only trouble with that is if they say, yes, you can get in line for this, but you have to have X amount of down payment, and we don't budget anything for it, then we're a whole year behind getting in line. So it's kind of a tough spot to be in.
Prices may vary too, over 3 or 4 years too. I mean,
Just to go along with that, my thinking was that, and we have the MRC money that we have sitting in an account that, again, if they came back and said, it's all just the guess right now, that we actually have numbers, but if they said, okay, we can get you in queue and we want 100,000, just a number, for example. We have the money to do it, but I would rather go to bid and see what the price is gonna be and when they can do it and what the terms are gonna look like. And 'cause if they come back and they say 500,000, they could come back, say million, like, we don't know what the price would be in 2-3 years, so I'd like to lock in as soon as possible.
Yeah.
what do you think, Rick? That sound like a plan?
I think it can be, though, if you did have money set in this budget and we got a company 4, 5, 6 months from now that was willing to put us in their queue, the company we approved of, then they were demanding an upfront payment. I well suspect they will be, then we'd be prepared to pay it. Now, as the council chair says, we can't make other money to do that if that's what we find it. We've done very well hanging on to the investment funds without spending. So to that end, how would you pay it if you had nothing?
That's why I'm wondering if we should kind of go somewhere in between and say, let's put 50,000 in for it. It's a lot less than 163, and it's not zero. And if we have to pull them, we're at least, putting something toward it. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll be 50,000 or less. So hold down at the bottom.
We'll never find out until we talk to the company.
That's right.
I could get behind that, putting something.
Something.
Would, I mean, I don't, so we're voting on it tonight, but if the consensus is that's what we would like to see, then that would be on the,
I'd like to see 50 rather than 163.
and seems like
That
a consensus.
lowers it another 113,000 until we know what it's gonna cost.
And so our next meeting is voting on the budget. Could we have something on there to authorize us to go out to bid, quote bid,
Yeah.
and get numbers?
We could put, you seem to be settling toward 50,000, we could put that in the budget, but we can also have another item on the agenda whereby we send this up.
And then obviously we have to vote to accept the bids, but at least we know what we're working with then.
That would be
Sooner.
another month or 2 or maybe 3 from then, depending on what we've done this one.
So we have a possible mill rate between 22 and 23, something like that, 22.
24, I think it was, but Bruce may have an adjustment to it right now.
I apologize, I wasn't here last week, but with the changes, I put in the changes that we made with the increase in the reserve accounts. And with the changes in the budget, and I came out with an estimated mill rate right now of 21.20.
Does that also count the 113,000?
No.
Okay. so
It
we
does
have,
not, no,
And
this
it
is,
doesn't count anything that we're gonna take out of our reserve accounts interest to offset.
it does not.
So I'm just worried about the bubble that, like Mr. Perry was here last week. Mr. Perry said, everybody from Boston's not gonna be coming up here and buying a house here in the next 5 years. You know, this could explode. And I'm glad we're gonna have at least a couple of years where we're not doing the assessment. We're getting in the queue and what have you. Because I think you're gonna see it explode. I think Mr. Perry was 100% right. So,
Well, I do know that there was a few years back, probably in the 1990s, where we had a similar thing happen, and a lot of towns went out for a reval because prices were going up. Well, they did level off, and then they had to adjust down after that.
Yeah.
So
it's tricky.
it's obvious that we can't get it done right now. So getting the figures and stuff up front is a good idea.
But our
Not
mill-
that you asked me
Our
that.
mill rate last year was 20,
25.72.
and now it's gonna be 21.20.
It's an estimate.
Or better.
Or better. Because remember, I haven't gotten all the values on, and I haven't gone out and done the building permits for this year. So if anything, it will be better.
My only question more for Melissa is because I had an email to Tony Jensen about what to take for main PERS and COB, and so he recommended not more than 5%. So I'm just making sure the budget as presented, because I didn't see it anywhere, that we're not planning on taking any PERS or
I
COB
have
funds or anything.
There's nothing in revenues to offset the budget from those main PERS, McGregor or Cobb funds.
Okay, like I didn't see it, but I just wanted to
Yeah,
double check.
last year, if you remember, we did it just at the time you, I believe we did it when we were going to do the commitment. And you folks
Is that when we
decided at
decided?
that
Yeah.
point how much you wanted to take from those funds in order to offset the mill rate.
So we
We can do that again.
don't decide on that during the budget. actual
Well, you
budget vote.
can, if you wanted to do that right now, or you can wait until we go to assessment and have a second vote to offset those revenues.
I think the numbers we were kind of floating around a little bit was 100,000 for PERS and 50,000 for COB. What Tony would deem acceptable for 2025 budget.
He'd say that would be sustainable.
Yeah, that would keep it so we're not dipping into the.
Would you like me to put that in for your vote for the budget?
Again, I would.
Makes sense, because we're not exceeding, not going beyond the interest to do that. We're not
Yeah,
digging
that's-
into the principal.
That number, the numbers I gave for each one were less than 5% too, so. Yeah.
But that's another 150,000.
Mhm.
113,000 we found tonight that we can, with the other numbers. 140,000. We're getting closer. Single digit increase rate. Come on, work with it.
I didn't know I was fighting.
Is there anything else on the budget? Just raise your hand if you have anything. Also, all right, we will close the meeting at 6:52. Adjourned at 6:52.
So move. Second.
All in favor? 7-0. Thank you all.